Alright, what's up guys? JaretCampisi back at the track for another video. Today we're going to be talking about how to run a 400 indoor. So indoor 400 meter dash. I've been getting a lot of questions about it, and it is kind of a completely different race than the outdoor 400. So I figured I would go about or cover the race, how I used to do it, some tips from your Uncle Jaret. Uncle Jaret. Anyway, stick around, you're going to like this one. Alright, so when it comes to running the 400 meter dash indoors, first there's a couple of things we have to get out of the way. Number one, there's different types of indoor tracks. So there's a flat track, which is like the basic standard indoor 200 meter track. So it's basically one lap is a 200 and it's flat, okay? Usually they have tight curves and pretty long straightaways. So that's like, I'd say the majority, probably like 70–80% of indoor tracks in the US are 200 meter flat tracks. From there you have a 200 meter banked track. This is what we had at Penn State. So that means some have like just like set banks, and some have banks that actually raise and lower. So I don't think a lot of tracks have bank tracks, so I'm not going to talk too much about the 400 from that regard. And then there's also a 300 meter indoor track, which means one lap is a 300. Those are a lot bigger, and that's like pretty similar to running a 400 on an outdoor track. So I think what would be most helpful for you guys would be for me to address how you run a 400 on a flat track 200 meter track, okay? When it comes to 400 indoors on a 200 meter flat track, one of the most important things that you have to understand when it comes to running this race is you basically start on the turn, you run your first turn straight away, your second turn, and then after that you're cutting in, okay? So when you cut in, now you're no longer in lanes, okay? So indoors in the 400, you start in lanes, and then after your first lap, you're no longer in lanes. So basically everyone funnels into the first lane on the track, okay? Because of the way that the tracks are designed, it's very hard to pass people on an indoor track, especially on curves. So usually what I found was whoever got to that cutoff first and was in the lead on that first lap, usually that was the person who won the race, just because it's really hard to pass people on the curves, and the straightaways are so short that you don't have a lot of time on the last straightaway to try to pass someone. Not that it didn't happen, because I used to pass people all the time on the indoor track on curves too, but that's because we had a bank track and I was also a badass. So in general, it's very hard to pass on an indoor track. So that's the first thing that you have to understand. It's not as much like go out of first 50, start your floating phase and all that. It's kind of get out hard and try to get to that cutoff first. It's just kind of like a free-for-all to the break, okay? That's what we used to do all the time. We used to actually practice it in practice too. Try to get to that first break, and just you can dictate the race from there. From there, going into that turn, if you want to kind of slow down a little bit and push people out, because you're allowed to have like 1 or 2 steps out. No one's allowed to pass you on the inside. You can always push them out of the way if they're on your inside. But on the outside, you're allowed like a step or 2. Now you can't run people all the way out. You will get disqualified. But what I recommend is get to that cutoff first, and then you can kind of cheat out just a little bit in your lane, because like I said, the turns are really tight, so you do not want to be hugging the inside of the curve, especially in lane 1, because it's going to be wasted energy trying to fight that centripetal force that's pushing you out. So you want to be kind of towards the middle or outside of the lane, and then that will also help keep people from passing you, okay? Another big thing is the turns in general are very, very tight and very hard on your ankles and your feet and your legs and everything like that. So what I used to actually do was, coming off the straightaway where I'm generating most of my speed, I would like not slow down, but almost like coast into the turns. I'd stay to the outside of my lane, and then I would start to take smaller strides, okay? So I'd start to turn over a lot more. You also have to lean a lot more into those turns, okay? I found when I went into a turn, like full speed into a turn, especially when I would run the 200 indoors, it would almost hurt me because I'd be fighting so hard to keep from like being pushed off the curve that I was wasting energy that I could have been using on the straightaways, okay? Or just using later on in the race. So it's something you kind of need to play around with and see what works for you. But for me, I used a lot more energy on the straightaways, a lot more bigger open strides, generating my speed, and then I would kind of coast into the turns, stay towards the outsides of my lane, and make sure I was turning over really well. And then after you got past the apex of the curve, that's when I would start to hammer off the curve a little bit more, and then again build my speed on the straightaway. That's where I was passing most of my people, unless they were really slow, then I would pass them on the curve too. But you know, that's basically what you need to do when it comes to indoor tracks and indoor 400 meter, okay? So use the bulk of your energy to get to that cutoff first. If you can get to that cutoff first and get to that breaking point in the lead, then you can dictate the race from there. Be careful around the curves. Make sure you're not running too hard on the curves. Always stay to the outside. Use your lean. Shorten your stride a little bit, and then obviously on the last home stretch, coming off that curve, use everything that you have. Go to your form and just turn over and try to get home. And if you have to cheat out just a little bit to push people out of the way, you can do that too. So yeah, that's how I used to run my indoor 400. It's a completely different race than the outdoor 400, but I think it's a lot of fun because it feels like you're going a lot faster. There's a lot of strategy involved. You can run a smarter race and beat people who might actually be better than you if you use these kind of tips that I just told you about here. So I hope that's helpful for you guys. Make sure you leave a big thumbs up if it is. Subscribe to the channel. Share this with friends and family who run these races and are looking to improve. And leave us your comments and questions below, and we'll catch you in the next one. See you guys. It's crazy sometimes.